Welcome, welcome, welcome. We survived the first full football weekend of the 2025 season. We had high school football Friday. We had college football Saturday. We had NFL football Sunday. My poor Panthers still trying to figure out what happened to them on Sunday. We got Jim Szoke in the house a little bit later on, about 12:45. He'll come in from the Panthers Radio Network to talk to us about Panthers. David Glenn, my co-host every other week, in the house with us here to chop up what we saw in college football. And of course, Conor ONeil in the house, Deacons and Devils Illustrated publisher Conor ONeil in the house. He'll help us preview NC State versus Wake Forest. That game is in 2 days. That game is Thursday. So we'll get into all that and more. It's a football heavy edition of the Desmond Johnson Show. Let's go ahead and hit it.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
Yeah, welcome to the Carolinas. Everywhere you go, the sky is Carolina blue, the finest. Live action, feedback, the city need that. I've been number one, no cap. Here's the recap. Adrenaline is my addiction. I'm about to relapse. Step on the turf if you won't and get your weed whacked. I'm going harder than a martyr on the starter end. It's the heart of man, that's a rap like a cardigan. I'm breaking records, it's 4th and inches. I count the seconds. The over-under's my roar of thunder, my secret weapon. Yeah, the game is to be told. I don't break, I break modes. Follow me on Tobacco Road.
Live with Desmond Johnson, son, the live is one. Represent NC to the fullest.
And again, welcome into the Desmond Johnson Show, brought to you by Nikki Rottweiler, Head Realty Group, EXP. If you're looking for a home in the Triad area, Nikki Rottweiler is the realtor for you. Desmond Johnson in the house here on the Desmond Johnson Show. Tuesdays and Wednesdays, 12:30 p.m. live, and Saturday mornings, 11 o'clock, will get you right for college football kickoffs and NFL Sunday. Wanted to bring in Conor ONeil, Deacons and Devils Illustrated publisher Conor ONeil. I watched some of the Duke-Illinois games Saturday, getting ready for my game. A&T was getting ready to play UCF in a night game that had a weather delay. We had a lot of weather delays this weekend, college and pro. The Panthers had an hour-long weather delay on Sunday, being down where they were. Thoughts on Duke? What exactly do you think happened against Illinois? Because it felt like it was kind of, every time I looked over, it felt like they were turning the ball over. Fumbles, just I saw Quayshawn Brown kind of muff the punt, and then felt like they just kept giving the ball back to Illinois. Was that something where, is Illinois as good as advertised in terms of being ranked number 11th in the country?
I don't know. Based on what I saw, I thought Duke was the more talented team. I just thought Duke's mistakes were catastrophes, and a good team is going to capitalize on your mistakes. Like, you don't have to qualify it with anything more than that. And Illinois was right there to take advantage of Duke's mistakes, both with turnovers, with the duplicate number penalty that gave Illinois life right at the start of the third quarter. Like, that was almost a bigger play than any of the 5 turnovers were, because Duke scores going into halftime to make it a 1-point game. They get a 3-and-out to start the second half. You're right there to win the middle 8. That every coach will tell you that's the most important part of the game that they want to win. And Duke just had a mental error on a punt and put 2 number 8s on the field. So I thought Duke was the better team on anywhere from like 60 to 80% of the snaps in the game, but you can't just win the game on those when the other 20 to 40% you're making the types of errors that Duke made.
Let me ask both of you guys, starting off with you, DG. We've got 2 weeks in the books now on ACC football and top 25 football, but staying here in the ACC, and I know, DG, you've been traveling, you've been moving around, you've seen some of these teams in person. What team has impressed you the most the first 2 weeks of the season in the ACC?
Real quick to follow up on Connor's point about Duke, I was field level for that game against Illinois.
See?
And in the trenches, Duke matched Illinois, which is a very physical team under Brett Bielema, who plays that style of ball. So I just wanted to double down on Connor's points. You know, the score was lopsided, and if you didn't watch it, you thought maybe the Illini just steamrolled the Blue Devils. It was more about 5 turnovers, more about some of those self-inflicted wounds. But to answer your question, in the ACC, I think you have to start with kind of an old school answer. The Miami Hurricanes and the Florida State Seminoles. I mean, we're only through 2 full weeks, and they both have wins over top 10 opponents. And then they played a lesser opponent in each case and absolutely curb stomped them the way you're supposed to do if you're a big-time team. So Miami beat Notre Dame, top 10 opponent. Florida State beat Alabama, top 10 opponent. We'll see if Clemson can rally moving forward after its kind of wishy-washy 1-1 start. But it feels like an old school answer, but the Seminoles and the Hurricanes from the Sunshine State both look pretty good. And in Miami's case, they look more well-rounded to me than they were a year ago. A year ago, they could give up 40 points, have Cam Ward wave his magic wand and win 52-45. This year's team is making plays on defense. Carson Beck's more of a distributor at quarterback and just a decision maker more than just that electrifying talent that Cam Ward was. And of course, FSU is a great story because they're bouncing back from 2-10, and they have a Boston College transfer who lost his job at BC, but he's a good fit for Gus Malzahn and Mike Norvell at FSU. And here they are 2-0 and nationally ranked again after that disaster of a year ago.
It's crazy, too, because FSU, just like Carolina, had a large turnover of their roster. If I'm not mistaken, I think like 70% of the roster got turned over in the offseason or something to that effect. So they're kind of in a similar situation, but it feels like FSU actually got more athletes, like dudes that can actually function and affect the game. Whereas on the Carolina side, they beat Charlotte 20-3. Went down, scored on their opening touchdown. Belichick gets his first win as a collegiate head coach, but nothing really like exciting or anything like going on with it there. FSU has opened some eyeballs. Now they played a cupcake on this past weekend and dropped 77 on them. But that opening win against Bama, it's making me wonder if Bama is actually, I've seen some stuff like online about Alabama in terms of the culture has changed so quickly from Saban being gone to DeBoer being there now. Somebody had posted that the Alabama players were getting like DoorDash at like 1:30 in the morning, like the day of the game. And they had like fans, like friends in and out of the hotel. And it was just like so unorganized as opposed to a Nick Saban Alabama team where it's lights out at like 11 or whatever. Everybody's rested, ready to go. And they were curious to see if it was going to carry over onto the field. And they were like, it's the most undisciplined Alabama team I've seen since pre-Saban, and he couldn't help but go back thinking about that hotel interaction in the lobby, watching the players or whatever late night. I don't know what's going to happen in Alabama. I do know that they can't. Well, I guess they could buy out the head coach, but it's going to cost them like $70 million, like a Jimbo Fisher kind of buyout type thing. I don't know. Alabama.
Somebody won the Powerball, but it wasn't the lady who said she would buy out Saban, right? Like the winners were not from Alabama.
So I don't know what's going to happen there. Is FSU the one that's impressed you the most, Conor, or is it Miami to DG's point, or is there someone else that you've been impressed with in the ACC the first 2 weeks?
I mean, DG's on it. Like the two CFP teams you feel good about in the ACC right now are those two, Miami and Florida State. I have a little bit of confirmation bias. I've been impressed with Georgia Tech. Some self-inflicted wounds came with 3 turnovers in the first, I think 3 possessions or 3 out of the first 4 possessions of Colorado, and they still wound up winning that game. And I think they had a gaffe of some kind that let Gardner Webb get out to a early like 6-0 lead this weekend, and then they scored 59 on them and won easily. So that was kind of a trendy preseason pick to the point where you almost felt like you were beating the drum a little bit too hard for Georgia Tech. But I've been really impressed with what Brent Key has built there. And I think that's a team that if they wind up playing Miami or Florida State for the ACC championship, or if it's Clemson or whoever, it'd be surprising. I don't know that that'd be that shocking based on what they've built down there.
Yeah, Georgia Tech 2-0. And if I'm not mistaken, they're facing Clemson coming up here on Saturday.
That's the big one.
Yeah, so that'll be a huge one there. Clemson, I don't know about Clemson.
We've been here before. We've been here before where we think they're wobbly and then they wind up with 9 wins by the end of the year.
I know, but I don't know. There was something about I knew they were come out second half and just do Clemson things and just kind of overpower them a little bit. But the fact that Troy took them, what was it, 16-3 at the half or something like that, like, and was kind of in control of that game. Like, this doesn't feel like a Clemson team from like in the past where it was just like they were just dominating, like throughout the whole thing. And I'm not sure what that is, but that Clemson Troy game, would be called what insiders call a money game. And I wanted to ask both of you guys about this because as you guys know, North Carolina A&T, we're their home for their athletics. We do their football and their basketball broadcasts, as well as podcasts and coaches shows. And we were taping Coach Sean Gibbs' coaches show yesterday. And he mentioned during the show, and that'll be out here midweek here on North Carolina's A&T's YouTube channel and Facebook channel. He mentioned during the game, they went down and played University of Central Florida down in Orlando. And we had that game Saturday night on Tobacco Road. And of course, they had a weather delay too. So we started late. But he mentioned, I think A&T got paid like $500,000 for the trip down. In that game, he ended up losing. A&T started off with 7 quarterbacks in the spring. They are now down to 1. And 4 of them got hurt in this football game. One of them broke their collarbone. 2 of them had like extended elbow injuries. The guy that broke his collarbone, he played like the last 20 minutes of the game, and they didn't know his collarbone was broken. Like, I say all of this and they lost by a lot. It wasn't even, it was like 67-0 or something to that effect. Like it got to a point during the broadcast where it was like the A&T call with like Donald Ware and Al Swan, like, we just need to get on the bus, get home before more people get hurt. Like, it turns to that kind of game. My question to you guys regarding these money games, because really week 2, week 3, you kind of see these, and that's why you had all these crazy lopsided scores where people were dropping 70 points, 60 points, like with ease on some of these schools. They're just clearly outmatched. They're clearly there just for a check. Should, with NIL and all this money now being able to be poured in from outside sources that wasn't there before, should those money games be paying out more to schools like North Carolina A&T, because they're basically risking their season going down now, because now their season is altered. They're missing quarterbacks. They're missing all these skill position players because they got hurt in a money game, where by the time they get back to Greensboro, between travel, food, lodging, medical, like all that stuff, by the time they're back, it's like, was it really worth the check? And Brian Holloway, the assistant AD over there, he told me in 2030, A&T scheduled to play Georgia. So they, we're just like, it's a money game, but it's Georgia. So it's like, I asked both of you, because both of you guys see it from different perspectives here, I would imagine. Starting off with you, DG, do you feel like money games have run their course? Like, should the school still do this, or should they just pay out more per money game now that there's more money coming in, especially if you're a Power 4?
My short answer is let the market decide, right? I mean, we're closer to true professionalism at the college level than ever before. And there's no restrictions on what head coaches can make, for example. There's no restrictions on this school having a $200+ million athletic department budget, and some other school has something less than 20 million, and sometimes those schools play each other. But we have restrictions on, for example, even in the new system, 20.5 million is the maximum that a school can share with its athletes in terms of this new revenue sharing model. But when it comes to these purchased games, it's supply and demand. And if you're A&T or anybody else, there's nothing stopping you from asking for $2 million for a game, or $1.5 million. There's also nothing stopping you from having the judgment to say, we don't want to play this team or that team. Everything in life is a trade-off, including this. So if you want the big cash, ask for as much as you think you can get from the market, and you're going to have to deal with the consequences of watching your football players get beat up by the Georgia Bulldogs or somebody else. That's the trade-off. This is not something that the NCAA is going to regulate. They're not going to mandate $1 million or $1.5 million. It's supply and demand. And sometimes schools desperately need a game on a short timetable, and they'll pay more. And sometimes they're planning many years out, and they're asking 5 different schools, will you come here for this amount? And whoever says yes to the low number gets the game. So, I mean, this is what all of us deal with in life all the time. The market is in play, and these schools have to make, their own personalized decisions for what's best for their football program along the way.
Conor, your thoughts on this? Because Wake basically just played a game like this on Tuesday versus Western Carolina that I know a lot of Wake fans were a little nervous going into, based off of what happened the week prior with Wake. Technically a money game, and Wake handled their business after a weather delay. What are your thoughts on the money game situation that happens early on in college football? Should it continue, or should they just pay out more?
So I'm kind of okay with the money game when it comes to a P4 paying a P5 or a G5 rather. Where you lose me is the FCS games being bye games and counting for regular season wins or losses in that case. I've said for a couple years now, I think the FCS games should move to spring, and I think those should replace spring games. I think you would still be able, like we've rehashed that these FCS programs rely on those big checks to fund whatever big percentage of their athletic department overall budget. So you keep that element to it. If you have Georgia paying East Kennesaw State, Tech, or whoever to come in and get run up and down your field for a spring game, and your fans are still going to be excited because it's football in the spring. You can get more excitement out of it if you play a regional opponent and you bring their fans in to see that game. And I think that's the way to go also with basically now every power conference is going to be at a 9-game conference schedule. The ACC hasn't announced it yet, but the ACC follows pretty much lockstep what the SEC does these days. So you can kind of count on that being the case with the ACC. I think if you're down to 3 non-conference games, it's an easy one to lop off because all of them play at least one FCS game a year. Just move that game to the spring. And and then you can still pay a Delaware or a App State or whoever. Those bye games can still exist, or you can still get the 2-for-1 deals where it won't be a bye game if App State comes, say, to Wake Forest twice, and then Wake goes up the mountain to play in Boone once. It's usually how those things work out. But
yeah,
that's kind of my solution that I'm sure has no traction with anybody actually making these decisions.
Real quick before we get Conor out of here, it's crazy. We're full swing football. Like I'm trying to remember where I am half the time right now because we're all over the place. NC State, Wake Forest. I want to get both of you guys. Are you going to be at that game, DG? Because I know you're moving around.
Yeah, okay, we bring our tailgate to that one on Thursday, so we'll be there outside the stadium in the hours leading up to the game, and then of course jump inside and watch what could be a good ball game.
Give me keys, both of you guys. Keys to the game. I'll have DG. We'll have you do NC State. Conor, you do Wake Forest. What's the key to the game for Wake Forest coming out of this with a victory on a Thursday night?
I mean, it's the number one. If you can see me holding up the number, I mean, Damon Claiborne is the straw that stirs the drink for Wake, and he plays 4 snaps in the opener, and they score 10 points, and their offense looks awful, and they can't even get to 350 yards against Kennesaw State. He gets 10 carries against Western Carolina. They put up 42 points. He has 193 yards and 3 touchdowns. You can caveat that with the opponent. I mean, NC State's defense is a whole lot better than Western Carolina's, but they built their offense around a star running back. And we actually got a snapshot of what that offense could look like at full potential with him in there last week.
DG, for the NC State side.
Yeah. Real quick on this one, I looked up the numbers. Whereas State has had the better of this rivalry historically by a pretty big margin, if you look more narrowly, in the last 12 matchups, it's 6 for the Wolfpack and 6 for the Demon Deacons. And in Dave Doran's time in Raleigh, he's been to Winston-Salem 6 times, and he's 2 wins and 4 losses. Just for some quick backdrop. But my key for the Wolfpack would be somewhat tied to Conor's key for the Demon Deacons, and that is the Wolfpack defense has to go into this game saying that number one is their priority, right? I mean, like, your defensive game plan has to be, we know what Damon Claiborne will do to us if we don't focus on him. And of course, that means Robbie Ashford, the Wake quarterback, is going to be asked to make plays in the passing game. He's a heck of an athlete. State, I'm sure, will have some kind of game plan where they don't want him to be able to use his legs. They want him to be forced to throw from the pocket. So there's a big burden on the Wolfpack defense. Remember, their legendary defensive coordinator is now, Tony Gibson is now the head coach at Marshall. So they gave up a ton of passing yards in their win over ECU. They gave up a ton of yards of all kinds in their win over UVA. So can Wake exploit the Wolfpack defense with some balance offensively? That to me is the key to the game. And, you know, Damon Claiborne is the best chess piece that Jake Dickert has in year one in Wake Forest. Yeah. And I would expect State to load up against that on Thursday night.
There's a lot of local kids. Well, not a lot. There's local kids. Well, state kids that have played high school football here in the state of North Carolina that play for both these schools, but in NC State in particular, a kid like a Hollywood Smothers or some of the other kids that they have over there. I feel like I've called their names over the past 4 or 5 years doing high school football in North Carolina. So there's a little bit of a local flair to it, which is great whenever State and Wake Forest get after it. That's a 7 o'clock kickoff.
Wesley Grimes, former Wake wideout, now with the Wolfpack.
Yeah,
and former teammates.
It seems like Dave Doran has been doing this where like these kids have been going off to like Big 10 or SEC schools when they first come out of high school, and then they're back on the depth chart or something. That's kind of what happened to Smothers, it feels like, where Doran's able to lure him back to the state of North Carolina in the portal. And now you got a guy that was rated, one of the top 100 kids in his class, like coming out one of the top wide receivers in his class. And now 2 years later, he's at NC State, which was probably a better fit than he was. Where did he go? Ohio State, I think it was originally.
Yeah. Noah Rogers, the wide receiver, went to Ohio State, then came back to NC State. Smothers was where? I think Oklahoma, and then came back.
That's what it was. Yeah, the running back Smothers. And then
those are two starters for Dave Doran.
And Noah Rogers was one of the top wide receivers in the state at Rollsville when he was here. So, and to go to Ohio State and be behind the depth chart there, get to NC State, start. I mean, I see how he's doing this, and it might be the way to go here in the future. Follow Conor on X and all the fun social media sites to catch up with his work for not just Wake Forest, but for Duke as well as Deacon and Devil's Illustrated publisher. And we will talk to you soon, Conor.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, and there he goes, and we will move him out and add in our good friend Jim Szoke from the Panthers Radio Network with a Carolina Panthers check-in. Jim, walk us off the ledge here, because I've gone from the gamut of emotions. My good friend Jonathan Stewart has helped out. He's the beacon of positivity. We do the Believe in Panthers podcast. Just did our midweek episode before we started doing this, and he keeps me even keeled. But I may have made a mistake of starting to do instant reaction shows. We decided to do that this year, so immediately following the games, and that's usually when I don't talk to anyone. I just kind of put myself to one side of the house and just kind of try to collect my thoughts. But we're going to try to put it out that way. Now that we're a couple of days removed from Sunday and you've had a chance to reflect on what you saw, are you concerned about the Carolina Panthers yet?
I mean, yeah, it's one game, and it's certainly not the way you want to start your season, but I'm probably more in the Jonathan Stewart camp of I remember how last season started and then how it finished. And granted, it finished with 5 wins, but they got through this journey where they were playing pretty good ball towards the end of the year, where they almost should have beat Kansas City. Philadelphia, same way, beat Atlanta with Bryce Young throwing 5 touchdowns at the end. So some of the components are there. So I feel like, what they showed Sunday is not who they're going to be for 17 games is not my thought. So I think, yeah, it was really, honestly, it was a terrible way to start the season. There's no sugarcoating that game. But as far as looking at the 2025 season, plenty of time to adjust, fix things. They brought in a lot of younger pieces that really didn't play a lot. They also added a lot of veteran guys in free agency who have not played together in a regular season game. So everybody's got that excuse. Half the teams win, half lose, half figure it out the first week, half don't. I'm banking on that axiom. The greatest improvement is made between weeks 1 and week 2. So hopefully the Panthers look like a different team in Arizona this week.
Yeah, Szoke, it's great to see you. I was listening to your call at halftime. I could hear the frustration in your voice as you were describing to the listeners what happened in the first half. And for those who weren't listening, you could hear the exasperation in Jake Delhomme's voice while commentating on the game, a little bit from Luke Kuechly as well. My question to Jim is about Bryce Young, who is under an intense microscope. Watching on TV, his interception, it seemed like he had a clear passing lane and just miscalculated the timing of the charging safety. It was weird when he threw the ball away seemingly on a 4th down. That just seemed like if it's 4th down, you might as well chuck it where somebody has a chance to pull it down, right?
It was 4th and 1. Like he still could get the first down. He just threw it away.
From the Panthers fans' perspectives would be extra frustrating when a guy's not a rookie anymore. What did you see, good and bad, from that guy at the most important position on the field?
Yeah, no, it was not one of his better games. To take you to the 4th and 1, if you go back and look at it this week, you'll see in that left slot Xavier Legette unguarded. He's just standing right there. So watch the play. He goes back to pass, and Xavier Legette turns his head to the left towards the sideline. Bryce is looking at him, and Xavier never looks back at him. So I think the timing got all thrown off where because he thought that was a hot read, if you will, that that was going to be the play, and all of a sudden it's not. So easy for us to sit back and watch it from up here, and yeah, there's no chance of catching a ball that's thrown into the stands essentially there. I think he just kind of ran out of options, and he wasn't trying to throw it away necessarily. I think he was just trying to make a split, second decision and maybe find JT Sanders at the back of the end zone there. So that happened, but there were bad plays. The interception was bad. Could have been a pick six that was nullified by a penalty elsewhere on the field there. So there were some bad moments there, but I think some of the things like him running for about 40 yards or whatever, picking his spots where he runs are good. And again, nothing great in this past game, but like Xavier Legette, again, not getting 2 feet in bounds on that out route where clearly most guys would have got 2 feet in bounds. Things like that, maybe we're not quite to the point where we overcome some adversities like that, where we need to get in a groove and some positive stuff going on. And obviously the late touchdown to Chuba was after the fact, but it's there. Chuba's good. I think Ketterell McMillan looks really sharp so far. So to kind of play off your Bryce question, I think he's going to love having T-Mac as part of the equation there. And it's disappointing, of course, you trade Adam Thielen and then Jalen Coker gets hurt. Jalen Coker, if you didn't look at resumes and where they came from and where they were drafted and just threw guys out there, you go, that Jalen Coker is the best of the young receivers out there. And he's right up there with T-Mac, I would say, at this point in his second year and probably ahead of Legette.
Yeah, Jim Szoke joined us here from the Panthers Radio Network. I agree. I'm not ready to push the panic button yet on the team or Xavier Legette in particular yet, but it is concerning to me that there was some things that kind of carried over from last year and the preseason that Legette's still kind of doing, just like awareness on the field and that kind of thing. I do agree with you. Ted McMillan is a baller. I'm not mad at all that they drafted Ted McMillan. Although I mentioned this on Believe in Panthers, there was a segment of Panther fans that kind of threw their hands up when they drafted him because we were like, we got a problem on defense. Like we have a serious problem going on here. And we did kind of go back and dissect the stats and everything. If you take away the 70-plus yard ETN run, they basically held the Jags like 113 yards rushing or whatever. You can't do that. That's not the way math works. So you got to add that in there. And I have a concern about the 3-4 defense that we're running and Ejiro Evero. Like we're getting to a point where I said that this will not go long without him being the first person on the hot seat if this kind of continues because Dave Canales didn't hire him. He was a carryover from the Frank Wright era. So, like, he's not his guy. Like, if anything, he's David Tepper's guy. But now that's kind of starting to, I don't know. It feels like there's cracks there. And Jim, you've been with the franchise since the inception. The only time I can remember the 3-4 defense ever working for Carolina was 95, 96 with Dom Capers. But even then, you have to have linebackers to make it work. Like Lamar Lathan, Kevin Green, Sam Mills. You know what I mean? Like they had like Hall of Famers playing linebacker. Anytime I think of a 3-4 defense for anyone that was like a great defense, like the 2000 Baltimore Ravens, it's all up the middle of the defense. You have to have a nose tackle that or a nose guard that can clog and take up blocks. You got to have a really, really good middle linebacker that can run traffic, Ray Lewis, and you need a safety like an Ed Reed behind him to clean up whatever didn't get cleaned up in the front. It feels like we don't have those pieces to do this, and we haven't for a couple of years. We really never have. So my question to you, you're watching this now, and you saw what kind of happened yesterday or Sunday where there was places where, ETN was kind of getting free, and there was places in the zone defense they were running that Lawrence kind of picked apart a little bit. Are you having questions about the 3-4 defense, and what do you think the vibe is regarding the job security of the current Panthers defensive coordinator? Because it does feel like he's going to be in the spotlight before anybody else if this continues to go a certain way.
Yeah, I mean, there's a reason coaches say you've got to stop the run first. If you don't do that, nothing else matters or works. And now that's 7 straight games where you give up 200 yards rushing. So they know that has to be improved. 8? Okay, yeah. 7. It's a new year. You lose count with the 8-month break. So 8. But it's not good. 7, 8, they're both bad. But 200 yards and whether it was 195, it's still 200, whatever it is. It was 200 exactly in this particular game. But I think for them, it's all about having good players. And we've seen in the league 3-4, 4-3. You're right. You have to. It's called 4 for a reason. 3-4. You have to have really good linebackers that are playing well. So to me, it's like a matter of you can work with either, and everything's kind of fluid and moving anyway. There's different packages that come out all the time where sometimes you've got essentially 4 down linemen. Sometimes you have 5. You have 6 defensive backs. So it's never always a 3-4. It's a base. But you do have to be very good at whatever you're doing out there. So I think that's why it's very, to your point, Trevin Wallace needs to step up And kind of like Xavier Leggett, like last year, I think Trevin, a lot was put on his plate, and then he had injury late in the year. Like this needs to be a year where Trevin Wallace, really plays to where they think he'll be as a third-round pick from last year. Like what I saw at Roseboom, unfortunately, losing Josie Jewell right before the preseason began was going to be another really veteran guy that would give you another really solid linebacker in there. So I do like what they did up front. Obviously, getting Derek Brown back is key, but some of the reinforcements they've got inside, what you said, the big guys that can stop the run, I think that is going to come and it's going to happen. Did not happen against Jacksonville. I think it will. And then that last level, that third level, I think Trayvon Merrick, they envision him as being, really that guy that's like that star position where he's in the box and he's, he's a nickel, he's a extra, linebacker, kind of a hybrid linebacker, as you will. So I think he'll help in that run support part of the game as far as from that back end. But yeah, it wasn't good. But again, I don't anticipate 16 weeks of that. It's got to get better. And if not, there's going to be a lot of people in trouble and they're going to have to make some changes personnel wise to fit a little bit better there. But it's, when you build a 3-4 defense and you've gone through camp and this is your personnel, it's hard to flip a switch and say you're 4-3. So I think it's less about that 3-4 versus 4-3 versus people making tackles. I mean, you can talk about some situations where maybe you wonder about, how they were personnel wise out there, how they were lined up, that kind of thing. There are also a lot of open field tackles that were just missed. That's just open field tackles that were missed. And if the coaches put you in position and you miss your one-on-one tackle, that's on you.
And that's going to be on tape. So, DG.
Yeah, at every level of football, Jim, we've heard the phrase, it's more about the Jimmies and the Joes than it is about the X's and the O's. I'm a lifelong Philadelphia Eagles fan, having grown up there. And I can tell you, if you ask me to summarize a lifetime of being an Eagles fan, when are they really, really good compared to when they're really, really bad, which I've seen many, many times, it's they have more star players. Right. The reason I bring that up is if someone asked you, who are the Panthers' 5 biggest difference makers in 2025? The first names that pop into my head would be a Derek Brown on the line, a J.C. Horn Pro Bowler in the secondary. Who are those 5 that should offer some hope if the team can get better around the edges to go along with that foundation?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I think those are the 2 biggest ones. And I would probably say as far as our 5, it may not be as impressive a list because I don't know that we're loaded with Pro Bowl players.
Yeah.
JC got in for the first time. Derek Brown before the injury was one. And you look on the offensive side, I think probably Chuba Hubbard would be in that group of 5, obviously. He played certainly well enough to be a Pro Bowl player last year. But, you go back like 10 years, I mean, we would name probably 10.
Yeah.
If you go to 2015, I mean, you go Luke Kuechly, Thomas Davis, Greg Olsen, Cam Newton, Ryan Khalil, Jonathan Stewart. You probably get in the double figures quickly there as opposed to even 5. So I totally agree. When Derek Brown got hurt last year, the coaches have to say next man up. There was no next Derek Brown up. I mean, there's a reason Derek Brown gets paid. You wouldn't pay Derek Brown if it was so easy as just the next man up. Somebody's got to be that next man up, but it was a disaster last year. So that's the thing. You've got to have some guys that really step up and, C players that become B players that become A players, and some A players that become Pro Bowl players. They don't have to be Hall of Fame, Luke Kuechly good, but you definitely need some guys that are either Pro Bowl or on the verge of Pro Bowl players to really be a competitive playoff team.
And the piggyback off of that, the names you kind of rattled off there from that kind of culminated in that 2015 team, that was from years of collecting, first round draft picks. Like everybody you just named was either a first round draft pick or was brought here by a trade, like Greg Olsen. Right. But all of those got Luke Kuechly, Jonathan Stewart, Cam Newton, all those guys were first round draft picks. So it takes kind of some time to build that. And I think that's the main thing the Panthers are behind in, where the era right after Ron Rivera up to now, the past 2 years, I feel like they've started to get it right draft wise. But before that, it felt like kind of hit or miss. And I think Stu might have said this a week or two ago on Believe in Panthers, where he went back to go look to see how many players are still on this roster from 2022. I think there's only like 6 of them or something like that. That's just like time lost in terms of like roster building. And I've mentioned it many times before that Panther fans kind of forget this Panther team, the core of it is really young. This is a very young Panther team. So to expect them to come out and just hit the ground running and win. This is Dave Canales' first stop as a head coach. Like all of this stuff is brand new. They're having to learn how to win. So yes, it's easy for me to be emotional at the end of a Sunday game where they lose 26-10, and I see all these things they could have just easily avoided, like self-inflicted wounds. You take the 3 turnovers away, that's probably a different football game. Like the tone of it, all of it, like it's probably completely different. So I'm not as upset as I was Sunday evening because I look at it like they just play clean football. They should be competitive in the majority of these games they're in if they are healthy. Getting you out of here, Jim. Panthers, Cardinals, 4:05 kickoff on Fox. We'll have Believe in Panthers live reaction show immediately following on the Believe YouTube channel. What's the number one thing you're looking for the Panthers to improve on from last week's debacle against the Jaguars going into this situation against Kyler Murray and the Cards on Sunday?
Football's easy if you think about the boring stuff as far as the fans. I mean, it still comes back to stopping the run first. You talk about James Conor and Trey Benson, and then a very mobile quarterback, as we all know, in Kyler Murray. If you can keep that reasonable as far as the rushing attack, Kyler Murray's not the best throwing quarterback in the league. He's got some great targets in Marvin Harrison and the tight end Trey McBride. But again, it takes a lot of pressure off the offense if the defense only gives up 20 or fewer points. So that to me is still the number one thing. Until proven otherwise, teams are going to continue to keep trying to gash you with the run. And when you take that away, they'll go do other things. But until that's taken away, as we've now established 8 games in a row that they have not, that's got to be job number one. I think everything else builds upon that, not only from the defense, but from the offensive standpoint as well, because then your defense gets worn down as the game goes on through their own fault for being out there for a long time. If your offense comes in and gets a 3 and out, and now your defense that just gave up, say, a 12-play touchdown drive has to trot back out there, it's just attrition that's going to get you. So that's a solid running attack they've got there, including the quarterback. So to me, we got to start stopping the run. If it means loading up a little bit more and making Kyler Murray try to beat you with his passing skills, so be it. But I think that's the number one priority going to Phoenix.
Now, I'll end it with this. This started off as a joke. I don't know if either one of you guys have seen it on X, but my beautiful wife, Jennifer, decided she saw it from a friend of ours on Facebook that's also a Panthers fan. She decided to make a Panthers bingo card, like of me, like during the games that she could like mark off to amuse herself throughout the games. And we posted it on Twitter, I think a day or two ago. It's been viewed like over 20,000 times at this point. So if you're a Panther fan, you're going through the anguish of trying to keep yourself occupied over the course of a 3.5 hour Panther game, go to my Twitter, print it out. She's got random stuff on here like me screaming, tackle him. There you go. Clapping randomly. Asking no one in particular, did he catch that? Like out loud. Because usually my family takes off to the other side of the house. Like and they leave me alone. Like when I'm watching the Panther game. Because they know I'm a scream. The dogs can get scared. Like they vacate and they disappear. But I guess they're hearing there's a bathroom break square on here. There's some swearing. Like, I mean, this is all this random stuff on here that I feel attacked. Like I feel seen doing it. I'm like, and all these Panther fans have come on Twitter like, man, I could use like 3 of these. Like I could fill out 3 boards of these watching the Panthers game. So I understand the anguish, Panther fans. Trust me, I totally understand it. But I do think we're closer to better days than where we were 2 years ago, where we were much, much closer to worse days. I still believe in Dave Canales and the Panthers and Bryce Young and everything else. They just had a bad day. Now, if they have a bad day Sunday, now that's a whole different conversation because that's 2 bad days in a row. So we got to kind of figure out there's something else going on here. Got to get you guys out of here and everybody else that's been watching get back to work. We'll be back tomorrow with a live episode. Mark Pruitt will be in the house from the Winston-Salem Journal, previewing the top high school football games in the Triad for week number 4. We're in week 4 now. So we'll get you ready for all of that and probably some more surprises too. Ryan Stone maybe be in for best bets also. So we'll get you ready for all of that. Thank you to Jim Szoke for coming in, my bi-weekly co-host David Glenn for stopping by from the North Carolina Sports Network, and Conor ONeil from Devils and Deacons Illustrated that helped us with college football earlier. We will see you guys tomorrow at 12:30 live here on Tobacco Road Sports Radio.